Hey guys, this is a follow-up video from the previous one on mobility. So for this we're assuming your mobility is fine to achieve a deep squat. This is just going through the three main points of technique on how to get the correct bar path and what we're looking for a below parallel squat, but not looking at strength, just the bar path and getting the technique correct for your individual biomechanics. And that's what we're going to look at first here. We have Laura and Lee, both very strong women, but we're just going to look at how their individual biomechanics dictate how subtly different styles that they squat with. So the next part, you're going to see me go through an assessment just of the three main points, and you can do this to yourself to see your individual biomechanics and how it's going to affect your squat. Alright guys, now we're just going to look at the three main biomechanical differences to determine a bit of a mind's eye on how they're going to squat. The first one has nothing to do with height. That's the first misperception. We're all short here. I'm actually 5'0" down. But no, we look at lever lengths is the first one. So it's the ratio of how long the shin is to the femur to the hip to where the bar goes. Just think of three rods and they're all strong levers. And so the most ideal biomechanical squatting is longer shanks, short femurs and long torsos. So when we look at these two, you can see Lee is fairly proportionate with maybe slightly longer femurs to shanks, and you'll see where that will come into play when she actually squats. And we can see Laura has shorter femurs, fairly proportionate to her shanks, and fairly proportionate to slightly longer torso compared to the length of her legs. So in easy terms, the short femur, long torso allows a more upright position to achieve depth, and the longer femur, shorter torso typically means they get a lot more forward angle lean, which is a completely fine squat for that person because that's what's dictated by physics. You can't get past that. But we can manipulate one thing. Because Lee has slightly longer femurs and shorter shanks, we can pop her in some heels and we can even out those two lever arms, which will achieve her a slightly more vertical position. The next thing we look at is the structure of their hip anatomy. If their hips are turned out, which means their toe angle can go out a little bit more, which frees up the hips to be able to achieve depth, or a more toe forward angle if they have internally rotated hips. So we'll look at Lee first. And this is easily determined. You just lay on your stomach, you hold the pelvis down flat, and this is external rotation, and that is internal rotation. And you can see Lee is quite neutral. She has fairly even movement in to out. So, standing up for me. As opposed to Laura, who has quite externally rotated hips, and she can just easily go all the way across and just blocks about there into internal rotation, jumping up. So Laura has slightly more externally rotated hips, so she'd be able to do a bit more toe out angle, and Lee would be somewhat more neutral. And if you had someone with really turned in hips, typically their toe angle is straight ahead. So we have lever lengths, we have hip anatomy, in terms of determining the bar path. And the next, I'm going to show you under the bar the three main points of good squatting technique based on the individual. So once you've determined the anatomical differences, I'm going to show you them under the bar because we want to achieve the three main things for a good squat technique, which is individual looking to each person, but the principles are the same. We need to achieve adequate depth below parallel with knees tracking over toes, neutral spine, and a bar path that keeps the centre of gravity over the midfoot. So I'm going to show you how that looks different for both of these guys now. So here we have Laura. In the next squat video, I'll go through some common cues we use for everybody. And then, of course, after that, there are individual cues. But with Laura's biomechanics, we're a barefoot squatter. You can see she's got a fairly aggressive toe out angle because of her externally rotated hips. She has, the bar placement for her is just, you'd call it mid bar, not high bar or extremely low bar, as this achieves the best centre of gravity for her. And you'll see as she does a squat now from the front, she achieves knees over toes and nice easy depth. And from the side, going down, neutral spine and centre of gravity is right over the midfoot. So that's for her individual biomechanics. Next we'll have Lee, and you'll see to achieve exactly the same principles, the squat looks somewhat different. So here we have Lee, and you'll see the differences are subtle but quite noticeable. Her stance is just slightly narrower due to her biomechanics, and the toe angle is slightly less aggressive because she just has neutral hips. She's quite the same with her mid-bar, but as she squats, you'll see same principles, knees track over toes, and as we come from the side, squatting down, neutral spine, and centre of gravity is still over that midfoot. Even though her stance is narrower, toes are turned in, they both achieve the same principles on the squat.